I was 10 years old the first time I had to carry my mother home. Not piggyback like a game, but dragged her unconscious body 3 blocks because she'd passed out in front of the corner store. Empty vodka bottle rolling away from her limp hand. My little brother Marcus stood next to me, his tiny hand gripping my jacket. He was only 4 years old, barely tall enough to see over the shopping carts lined up outside. "Is Mama sleeping?" he asked in that small voice that always broke my heart. I lied to him. I'd gotten good at lying. "Yeah, buddy, she's just really tired from work." The truth was, our mother hadn't worked in over 8 months. The truth was, the only thing she worked hard at was finding her next drink. Getting her home was like trying to move a sandbag. I was skinny for my age, all elbows and knees, but somehow I managed. I grabbed her under the arms and dragged her while Marcus followed behind, carrying her purse and whimpering softly. People walked past us without stopping. In our neighborhood, this kind of scene wasn't unusual enough to warrant attention. When we finally got inside our apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like mildew and old cooking oil, I laid her on the couch. Marcus immediately crawled up next to her, curling into her side like he always did. Like maybe his small body could somehow make her better. I covered them both with the threadbare blanket from my bed and went to check what we had to eat. 3 eggs, half a loaf of bread that was starting to get hard, and a can of beans. I made Marcus scrambled eggs and toast, cutting it into small squares the way he liked. I ate the beans cold from the can, standing at the counter, watching them both sleep. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. By the time I turned 13, I'd become an expert at survival. I knew which churches gave out free meals on which days. I knew which grocery stores threw out their expired food in bags rather than breaking everything apart. I knew how to forge my mother's signature on school forms and how to explain away bruises with stories about basketball games and skateboarding accidents. Marcus was 7 now, and I'd taught him everything I could. How to read using picture books I'd stolen from the library sale bins. How to count money using the coins I found in couch cushions and parking lots. How to be quiet when Mama was resting so she wouldn't wake up angry. The apartment we lived in was a disaster. Dishes piled in the sink because we'd run out of dish soap weeks ago, and I hadn't figured out how to get more. Trash overflowing because our mother forgot to take it out, and I couldn't lift the heavy bags down 3 flights of stairs by myself. Clothes scattered everywhere because the laundromat cost money we didn't have. But Marcus's corner was clean. I made sure of that. He had his small mattress on the floor with the sheets I washed in the bathtub. He had his 3 toy cars lined up neatly. He had the drawings he'd made taped to the wall above his bed. Colorful crayon pictures of houses with families and dogs and sunshine. Our mother's income came from government assistance and disability checks. The money that was supposed to feed us, clothe us, keep the lights on, went straight to the liquor store 3 blocks away. They knew her by name. Sometimes I'd see her stumbling out with a brown paper bag, and she'd walk right past us without recognition in her glassy eyes. I got my first real job at 13, lying about my age to wash dishes at a diner 6 blocks from our apartment. The owner, Mr. Chen, knew I was too young, but he saw something in my eyes that made him look the other way. Desperation, probably. Or maybe determination. He paid me under the table $40 for a 6-hour shift and let me take home leftover food at the end of the night. That food kept Marcus fed. Those $40 meant I could buy him new shoes when his toes started poking through the old ones. It meant I could get him a winter coat from the thrift store instead of making him wear 3 layers of my old sweatshirts. I told Marcus I was taking computer classes after school. Another lie, but necessary. He needed to believe our lives were normal, that other kids didn't have real parents who cooked dinner and helped with homework and showed up to school events. The first time I bought something new for myself, I was 13 and a half. A white t-shirt from the discount store, $5. It was plain, nothing special, but it was mine and it was clean and it didn't have anyone else's name written in faded marker on the tag. I came home wearing it, smiling for the first time in months. I thought maybe, just maybe, our mother would notice, would see that I was trying, would be proud that I'd earned the money myself. Instead, she was waiting in the kitchen, drunk but functional, which was somehow worse than when she was passed out. The second I walked through the door, her hand connected with my face so hard I saw stars. I can barely scrape together enough for my essentials, and you think you can come parading in here with fancy new clothes? She hit me again and again until I crumpled to the floor. "Who do you think you are?" I touched my throbbing cheek and stared up at her. The woman who was supposed to protect me was the one hurting me. And her essentials were bottles with labels I'd learned to recognize from the recycling bin that was always overflowing. "Get out," she hissed, her breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "Get out of my house. No son of mine will be a spoiled brat." Panic seized my chest. Marcus. Where was Marcus? I glanced at the clock. He'd be home from school in 20 minutes. The last thing I wanted was for him to come home to our mother in this state. Or worse, for him to come home and find me gone and think I'd abandoned him. "Please," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Let me just wait until Marcus gets back. I'll leave after, I promise." She grabbed my shirt, the new white shirt that was already torn, and yanked me toward the door. "Now!" So I left. I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor and sat in the stairwell where I could watch our door. When I saw Marcus climbing up with his small backpack, I intercepted him before he could go inside. "Hey, buddy, want to go to the playground?" His face lit up the way it always did when I suggested something fun. "Really? But don't you have homework?" "I finished it already, come on." We spent hours at that playground. I pushed him on the swings until my arms ached. I helped him across the monkey bars, even though he could do them himself now. I let him win at tag, even though I was faster. And when the sun started setting and the temperature dropped, I knew I couldn't take him home yet. We got dinner from Mr. Chen's diner. He saw my face, swollen and starting to bruise, and didn't ask questions. Just gave us extra food and told me to be careful. Marcus noticed my injury, but believed me when I said I'd bumped into a door at work. By the time we headed home at 9 p.m., Marcus was exhausted. I carried him the last 2 blocks, his head resting on my shoulder, his small body completely trusting and peaceful. That's when I knew with absolute certainty that I would do anything to protect him. Anything. Our mother was passed out on the couch when we got back. I carried Marcus to his corner, helped him into his pajamas, and tucked him in. He fell asleep immediately, his hand clutching my finger like he used to do when he was a baby. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the wall, watching both of them. One person I'd die for. One person I'd learn to survive despite. The months that followed were a blur of routine. School for Marcus, work for me. Avoiding our mother when she was conscious. Checking on her when she wasn't to make sure she was still breathing. The apartment got worse because I couldn't keep up with everything. But Marcus's corner stayed clean. His stomach stayed full. His homework got done. I taught myself to cook using recipes I found in discarded magazines. Nothing fancy, but I could make spaghetti without burning it. I could bake a potato in the oven. I could make a can of soup stretch into 2 meals with extra rice. Marcus's 7th birthday came and went without celebration. Our mother didn't remember. I used my tip money to buy him a small cake from the grocery store and a used toy robot from the thrift store. We ate the cake in his corner, just the 2 of us, and I sang happy birthday in a whisper so we wouldn't wake her up. "This is the best birthday ever," he said, chocolate frosting on his chin. I knew it wasn't. I knew other kids had parties with friends and presents and families who cared. But Marcus didn't know any different, and I was grateful for his innocence even as it broke my heart. The breaking point came 3 months after my 14th birthday. I came home from my shift at the diner to find Marcus sitting outside our apartment door in the hallway, crying silently, the way I'd taught him to cry so he wouldn't disturb the neighbors. "She locked me out," he whispered when he saw me. "I forgot my key at school and she won't answer the door." I pounded on that door for 10 minutes. No answer. I knew she was in there because I could hear the TV. She was ignoring her 7-year-old son sitting in a hallway where anyone could hurt him, where he was cold and scared and alone. That's when I knew we needed help. Real help. The kind I couldn't provide anymore. I didn't know where else to go, so I took Marcus back to the playground. The same one where we'd hidden that day she'd kicked me out. It was nearly midnight, and the swings swayed gently in the breeze, creating soft, creaking sounds that seemed too peaceful for how I was feeling inside. Marcus was shivering despite wearing my jacket over his own. "Are we going to sleep here?" he asked. Not afraid, just curious. That broke me. The fact that he was so used to instability that sleeping in a playground seemed like just another adventure. "Nobody. I'm going to find us help." I'd been sitting there for maybe 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do when I heard footsteps approaching. A woman emerged from the shadows, her silhouette illuminated by the streetlight. She was older, maybe 50, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and wearing a jacket that identified her as a community outreach worker. "It's pretty late for you boys to be out here," she said gently, sitting on the swing next to mine without invitation, but somehow without intrusion either. I could have lied. Should have lied. But I was so tired. Tired of carrying everything alone. Tired of pretending. Tired of being 14 and feeling 40. "We live 2 blocks from here," I said. "Our mom locked my brother out and won't answer the door." The woman's eyes, kind and sharp at the same time, assessed us both. She saw Marcus's too thin frame, my bruised face that was still healing, our worn-out clothes and exhausted expressions. "My name is Janet. I work with families in crisis. Can you tell me more about your situation?" I told her everything. The words poured out like I'd been storing them up for years, which I guess I had. The drinking, the neglect, the times we'd gone without food, the times she'd hit me, the constant fear, the knowledge that I was barely keeping us afloat and eventually I'd fail and something terrible would happen to Marcus. Janet listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. When I finished, she said something I'll never forget. "You've been incredibly strong, but you're still a child. You shouldn't have to be raising your brother. Let me help you." Part of me wanted to refuse. I'd been taking care of Marcus for so long that the thought of anyone else doing it felt like failure. But another part of me, the part that was still just a scared 14-year-old kid, desperately wanted someone else to take some of the weight. "What happens now?" I asked. "I'm going to call Child Protective Services. They'll send someone to do a welfare check on your home. Based on what you've told me, you and Marcus will likely be placed in emergency foster care while they investigate." My heart sank. Foster care. I'd heard horror stories. Kids separated, abused, moved around constantly. "Can Marcus and I stay together? I can't promise anything, but I'll note in my report that you two should remain together if possible. You clearly have a strong bond." She called from her cell phone right there, speaking in low tones while Marcus dozed against my shoulder. Within 40 minutes, a police car and a van from Child Services pulled up to the playground. The police officer was young, maybe late 20s, with a friendly face but serious eyes. The social worker was a middle-aged Black woman with a calm, professional demeanor. They asked me to repeat my story, which I did, though with less detail than I'd given Janet. "We need to go to your apartment to assess the situation," the social worker said. "After that, we'll take you both somewhere safe for tonight." The walk back to our building felt surreal. Marcus was fully awake now, holding my hand tight, his eyes wide as he took in the police officer and social worker following us. "Are we in trouble?" he whispered. "No, buddy, we're finally getting help." Our mother actually answered the door this time. She was drunk but trying to hide it, standing up straight and speaking carefully. Her eyes widened when she saw the police officer and social worker behind us. "What's going on?" The social worker explained that they'd received a report of child neglect and needed to inspect the home. Our mother's face went through several emotions: confusion, anger, fear, and finally a crafty kind of calculation. "There's been some misunderstanding. My boys are fine. Everything's fine here." The officer asked if they could come in. Our mother couldn't refuse without making things worse, so she stepped aside. I watched as they took in the filthy apartment, the overflowing trash, the empty bottles everywhere, the stained furniture, the general decay of a home that had stopped being cared for. The social worker asked Marcus to show her his room. He took her to his corner, and I saw her expression soften when she saw the clean space I'd maintained for him in the midst of chaos. She looked at me with new understanding. They asked our mother questions: where she worked, how she supported the family, when she'd last been to a doctor, how often we had food in the house. Our mother lied through her teeth, but her lies were sloppy, contradicting each other. The officer noticed my bruised face. "How did you get hurt?" Before I could answer, our mother jumped in. "He's clumsy, always running into things." The officer looked at me with raised eyebrows, silently asking for the truth. I could have backed up her lie. Part of me wanted to, because she was still my mother and some damaged part of me still wanted to protect her. But then I thought about Marcus, about his future, about what would happen if I stayed silent. She hit me, I said clearly, multiple times, because I bought myself a shirt with money I earned. The room went completely still. Our mother's face turned red, then white. He's lying. Ma'am, I need you to step outside with me, the officer said firmly. While they talked in the hallway, the social worker sat with Marcus and me on his mattress. I know this is scary, but you're both very brave. We're going to take you somewhere safe tonight. An emergency foster home where you'll have clean beds, food, and people who will take care of you properly. Together? I asked, my voice cracking. Together, she confirmed. I watched through the window as the officer spoke with our mother in the hallway. At one point, she tried to come back in, but he stopped her, his hand on her arm. Not rough, but firm. When he came back inside, his expression was grim. Boys, gather some of your belongings. You're coming with us. We didn't have much. I packed Marcus's clothes in a garbage bag along with his 3 toy cars and his favorite stuffed animal he'd had since he was a baby. For myself, I just grabbed a change of clothes. Everything I owned would fit in a single backpack anyway. As we left, Marcus looked back at our mother, who was standing in the hallway looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Bye, Mama, he said softly. She didn't respond, just stared at us with an expression I couldn't read. Anger? Sadness? Relief? Maybe all 3. The emergency foster home was in a quieter neighborhood about 20 minutes away. The house was small but clean, with a yard and actual curtains in the windows. A couple in their 40s greeted us at the door. David and Margaret Henderson. They showed us to a bedroom with 2 twin beds, actual beds with frames and clean sheets and pillows that didn't smell like mildew. Marcus's eyes went wide. Is this really for us? Yes, sweetheart, Margaret said. Why don't you both get some sleep? We can talk more in the morning. That night, I lay in a real bed for the first time in years and listened to Marcus's breathing from across the room. He fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the emotional upheaval. I stayed awake, my mind racing, wondering what would happen next, whether we'd made a terrible mistake, whether our mother would somehow get us back. But mostly I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. The Henderson home was nothing like our apartment. There was food in the refrigerator. Real food, fresh vegetables and fruit, milk that wasn't expired, bread that was soft. The bathroom was clean and had soap and shampoo that smelled like lavender. The living room had a couch without stains and a TV that worked without having to hit it. But the most shocking thing was how the Hendersons treated Marcus. They treated him like he mattered. Like his opinions and feelings were important. Like he was a kid who deserved good things. Margaret made him breakfast every morning. Eggs, toast, sometimes even pancakes. She asked him what he wanted to eat, what he liked, what made him happy. David helped him with his homework, patiently explaining math problems until Marcus understood. They enrolled him in a better school, one where the building didn't have broken windows and the teachers actually seemed to care. They bought him new clothes that fit properly. They took him to the doctor for a checkup and the dentist to fix a cavity I hadn't known he had. They signed him up for activities, a soccer league, an art class at the community center. Marcus thrived. His eyes got brighter. His smile came easier. He laughed more. He stopped having nightmares about our mother, but they treated me differently. I wasn't mistreated exactly. I had a bed and food and they weren't cruel. But there was a distance, a coldness. While David spent hours playing catch with Marcus in the backyard, he barely spoke to me beyond basic necessities. While Margaret doted on Marcus, asking about his day and his friends and his dreams, she gave me perfunctory nods. I understood. They'd wanted to foster a young child, someone moldable and innocent. Instead, they got a package deal that included a damaged teenager with trust issues and a protective streak a mile wide. They saw me as Marcus's brother, nothing more. The awkward addition that came with the prize. And honestly, I was fine with that. As long as Marcus was happy and safe and loved, I could handle being the afterthought. I'd spent years putting his needs before my own. What was a few more? Part 6 continued. The breaking point. 3830, 45s. The only person who turned him against me was you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm even as anger burned in my chest. You abandoned us. You neglected us. You chose drinking over being a mother. And now you're doing it again. She lunged at me then, her fists connecting with my chest, my face, anywhere she could reach. I didn't fight back. I just tried to shield myself, aware that everyone was watching, that Marcus was watching. I gave up everything for you ungrateful brats, she screamed, still hitting me. I wasted the best years of my life raising you. You owe me. You owe me everything. Security finally intervened, two large men pulling her off me while she continued to scream and thrash. Parents had formed a protective circle around the kids, including Marcus, keeping them away from the chaos. David and Margaret rushed over to me, checking my face where she'd hit me hard enough to split my lip. Are you okay? Margaret asked. And for the first time since the adoption, she sounded genuinely concerned about me. I'm fine, I said, wiping blood from my mouth. Is Marcus okay? We both looked over to where Marcus was standing with his team. His face was pale, his eyes wide with shock. He'd seen everything. The drunkenness, the violence, the screaming about how she'd sacrificed for us. Our mother was still yelling as security escorted her away. Marcus, baby, don't listen to them. I love you. I've always loved you. These people stole you from me. One of the other parents, a woman I'd seen at previous games, stepped forward. She worked as a therapist with at-risk youth, I'd later learn. She positioned herself between our mother and the kids, speaking firmly but calmly. Our mother shoved her, trying to get past, still reaching for Marcus. That's when someone called the police. When the officers arrived, our mother was beyond reasoning with. She was screaming accusations, claiming we'd assaulted her, that the family had kidnapped her children, that she was the victim in all of this. But dozens of witnesses had seen what actually happened, had watched her attack me unprovoked, had heard her drunken rants, had seen her try to physically grab Marcus against his will. The officers arrested her for assault and attempted kidnapping. As they led her away in handcuffs, she was still screaming threats, still claiming we owed her, still refusing to take any responsibility for her actions. Marcus broke down crying. Not the quiet, controlled crying I'd taught him as a kid, but loud, heaving sobs that shook his whole body. David tried to comfort him, but Marcus pushed him away and ran to me, throwing his arms around my waist like he used to do when he was little. I'm sorry, he sobbed into my shirt. I'm so sorry. You were right. You were always right. I should have listened to you. I held him tight, my own tears finally falling. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. She's good at manipulation. That's what she does. The game was postponed. Everyone was too shaken to continue. We went home as a family, me, Marcus, David, and Margaret. And for the first time since the adoption, we had a real conversation. They apologized. Genuinely, tearfully apologized for doubting me, for suspecting me of theft, for treating me like an outsider in my own home. We saw what we wanted to see, David said, his voice thick with emotion. A damaged teenager with behavioral issues. We didn't see what you actually were, a kid who'd sacrificed everything to protect his brother. Margaret took my hand. We were wrong about you. We've been wrong from the beginning. You're not just Marcus's brother. You're our son, too, and we should have treated you that way from day one. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long accepting their coldness as the price of Marcus's happiness that their warmth felt foreign. Marcus refused to let go of me that night. When it was time for bed, he asked if he could sleep in my room like he used to do when we were little. We pushed our twin beds together, and he fell asleep holding my hand, just like when he was 4 years old and afraid of the dark. I stared at the ceiling, processing everything that had happened. Our mother was in jail. The family finally believed me. Marcus had seen the truth. It should have felt like victory, but mostly I just felt exhausted. The next few days were a blur of legal proceedings and therapy sessions. The therapist from the soccer game, Dr. Sarah Williams, offered to see our family for free, saying our case had touched her deeply. The items that had been stolen were found in our mother's motel room during a police search. Margaret's pearls, David's watch, even the cash from Margaret's purse. All of it carefully collected as insurance, probably for when she needed to manufacture a crisis. David and Margaret sat me down with genuine remorse in their eyes. "We owe you a massive apology," David said. "We let our preconceptions blind us to the truth. We're so sorry." But more than their words, their actions changed. David started joining me and Marcus for our evening talks. Margaret asked about my day the same way she asked about Marcus's. They attended my school events, the robotics competition I'd joined, the academic awards ceremony where I received a scholarship nomination. For the first time since the adoption, they treated me like their son. Marcus struggled the most with processing everything. Dr. Williams explained to him how our mother had groomed him, using his natural desire for maternal love against him. How abusers often target the most vulnerable family member. How none of it was his fault. "She told me you were jealous," Marcus confessed during one of our late-night talks. "That you couldn't forgive her the way I could. She made me feel special, like I was the mature one, the compassionate one. And you were just bitter." "Classic manipulation," I said. "Making the victim feel special for accepting abuse. Making them feel superior to the people trying to protect them." "How did you always know?" he asked. "How were you never fooled?" "Because I remember what she was really like. You were too young. You didn't have to carry her home drunk. You didn't have to scrape together money for food while she spent everything on alcohol. I protected you from those memories, and that made you vulnerable to her lies." He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you. You're my little brother. You don't have to apologize to me. You're safe now. That's all that matters." Our mother's charges were serious: assault, attempted kidnapping, harassment, stalking. The DA's office was thorough, building a case that included testimony from witnesses at the soccer game, evidence of her fraudulent crowdfunding campaigns where she'd claimed to need legal fees to rescue her children from an abusive foster family, and documentation of all the harassment David and Margaret had endured. Her public defender tried to argue she had mental health issues and needed treatment, not imprisonment. Our lawyer countered with months of calculated, methodical abuse. The fake scratches she'd given herself to frame me, the strategic theft and planting of items, the manipulation of a vulnerable child, the lies told to anyone who would listen. None of it was the behavior of someone too mentally ill to understand their actions. It was the behavior of someone who understood perfectly and simply didn't care who she hurt. The trial was harder than I expected. Having to testify, to lay out every detail of our childhood abuse. Every night we went hungry. Every time she chose alcohol over her children. Having to watch Marcus testify, his voice breaking as he described how she'd manipulated him. David and Margaret testified about the toll her harassment campaign had taken on their family. Margaret described her anxiety attacks, how she'd been afraid to leave her house. David talked about the damage to his professional reputation when she'd shown up at his workplace. Even Sarah, David, and Margaret's biological daughter, who was away at college, flew home to testify about how her childhood home had become a fortress. How she'd been afraid her mother was stalking her at school. How she'd had nightmares about her family being torn apart. When our mother took the stand in her own defense, she was sober and well-groomed, playing the role of the reformed addict. She cried. She apologized. She claimed to have been sick during our childhood, to not have been in her right mind. But during cross-examination, the prosecutor destroyed her carefully crafted narrative, presented evidence of her continued drinking throughout her sobriety, her failure to maintain any job for more than a few weeks, her fraudulent fundraising campaigns, her calculated harassment. When confronted with the evidence, her mask slipped. She started making excuses, blaming others, claiming we'd all conspired against her. The jury saw what I'd always seen: a woman who would say anything, do anything, hurt anyone to get what she wanted. The verdict was guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison with mandatory substance abuse treatment and psychological counseling. As they led her away, she looked at Marcus one last time. "I do love you," she said, and maybe in her own twisted way she believed it. But love without action is just words. And her actions had spoken far louder. The months following the trial were like learning to breathe again. The constant anxiety that had been my baseline for years finally started to ease. David and Margaret didn't just apologize with words. They showed it through actions. They set up a college fund for me equal to what they'd saved for Marcus. They insisted on family therapy sessions where we worked through the damage their initial rejection had caused. We judged you from day one, Margaret admitted during one session. We saw you as baggage that came with the child we wanted. We're ashamed of how we treated you, and we want to make it right. It wasn't an instant fix. Years of feeling like an outsider in my own home couldn't be erased with a few apologies. But they were consistent, patient. They showed up day after day, proving they meant what they said. David started teaching me to drive, spending hours in parking lots while I practiced parallel parking. Margaret helped me shop for clothes for college, actually caring about what I liked instead of just grabbing whatever was cheapest. The most surprising change was Sarah. My sort of sister who'd barely acknowledged my existence for 3 years suddenly started treating me like an actual brother. She'd call from college just to check in, send me care packages with snacks and study supplies, give me advice about dealing with our parents. I was horrible to you, she admitted during one of her visits home. I saw you as competition for my parents' attention instead of as another person who needed a family. I'm sorry. You were protecting your family, I said. I get it. Yeah, but you were part of the family. I just didn't want to see it. Marcus and I grew closer than ever. The experience had stripped away the illusions our mother had built, leaving just the truth of what we meant to each other. He started calling me his hero again, like he used to when he was little. You gave up your childhood to make sure I had one, he said one night. That's not something I'll ever forget. Dr. Williams continued to see us, helping Marcus process his guilt about believing our mother's lies, helping me process my anger about being doubted, helping David and Margaret understand the damage their emotional distance had caused. My senior year of high school was the first time I felt like a normal teenager. I joined clubs, made friends, went to prom, applied to colleges based on what I wanted to study, not just what I could afford. The acceptance letters started arriving in spring. I'd been accepted to 5 schools with significant scholarships. David and Margaret sat me down to discuss options, making it clear they'd cover whatever the scholarships didn't. Choose the best program, David said. Don't even think about the cost. I chose a school about 3 hours away, close enough to visit regularly, far enough to build my own life. Marcus struggled with the idea of me leaving. We'd never been apart for more than a few days. But Dr. Williams worked with us on healthy separation. We practiced with weekend trips where I stayed with friends, and Marcus learned to rely on David and Margaret for support. It was harder than either of us expected, but necessary. The therapist from the soccer game, Dr. Williams, wrote me a recommendation letter for college applications. She suggested I consider social work as a career path, saying my experience and protective instincts would make me excellent at helping other vulnerable kids. The idea took root. Maybe I could use everything I'd been through to help others in similar situations. Turn trauma into purpose. Summer before college was perfect in a way I'd never experienced. David and Margaret took us all on vacation to the mountains. We hiked, fished, sat around a campfire telling stories. Marcus and I taught Sarah how to skip rocks across the lake. David tried to teach me how to read a map after I got us lost on a trail. We were a family. A real one. Not perfect, but real. During one late-night conversation by the fire, Marcus asked if I ever regretted everything I'd done for him. Never, I said. Watching you grow up happy and healthy, knowing you got the childhood I couldn't have, that's worth everything I went through. He hugged me then, fierce and tight. When I have kids someday, I'm going to tell them about you, about what real love looks like. College move-in day was emotional chaos. Margaret cried while helping me make my bed. David carried boxes up 4 flights of stairs without complaining. Marcus tried to reorganize my entire dorm room, claiming he was optimizing my space. Sarah had driven down from her graduate program to help, bringing a care package full of instant noodles and protein bars. The essentials, she said with a grin. My roommate, a kid named Tyler from a small town upstate, watched my family's organized chaos with wide eyes. Marcus immediately started interrogating him about his study habits and intentions, and I had to physically remove my little brother from the room. When it was time for them to leave, each family member pulled me aside. David slipped me $200 for emergencies. Margaret made me promise to call if I needed anything at all. Sarah punched my arm and told me to not screw this up. Marcus was last. He handed me a wrapped present. Don't open it until we're gone. Inside was a framed photo from his championship game. the one after the trial, where he'd scored the winning goal. We were both in the picture, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling genuinely for the first time in months. On the back, he'd written, "Thank you for giving me a childhood. Now go live yours. Love, Marcus." I stood at my dorm window and watched their car disappear, tears running down my face. For the first time in my life, I was truly on my own, not running from abuse, not protecting anyone, just starting my own journey. The $3,000 I'd saved was still in my account, but now it was for textbooks and late-night pizza, not escape plans. Marcus called 3 times that first night to make sure I was okay. Margaret texted asking if I'd eaten dinner. David sent a photo of them at Marcus's favorite restaurant, my empty chair clearly visible at the table. It should have made me sad, but instead I felt grateful. This was what family looked like. College life was an adjustment. For the first time ever, I didn't have someone depending on me. I could sleep in on weekends, stay up late studying without worrying someone needed me, make friends without calculating how it affected someone else. It was liberating and terrifying in equal measure. I joined study groups for my classes, made friends with people in my dorm, even went to a few parties, though I'd never touched alcohol and wasn't about to start. Tyler turned out to be a good roommate. Quiet, studious, respectful of boundaries. Marcus visited once a month, usually bringing care packages from Margaret full of home-cooked meals and snacks. He'd tell me about his soccer season, his classes, his friends. Sometimes he'd stay the whole weekend, sleeping on an air mattress on the floor of my dorm room, and we'd stay up late talking like we used to. David and Margaret came for family weekend, proudly wearing matching sweatshirts with my school's logo. They attended the parent events, asked intelligent questions about my classes, took me and Tyler out for dinner. Watching them interact with other parents, seeing how proud they were to introduce me as their son, felt surreal. These were the same people who'd treated me like an obligation for years, and now they were bragging about my grades and telling strangers about how I'd protected Marcus our whole childhood. People change, I realized. If they want to. If they try. During winter break, I came home to find they'd kept my room exactly as I'd left it. Marcus had won more soccer tournaments and was being scouted by college teams. Margaret had started volunteering with a foster youth advocacy organization. David had gotten promoted to senior partner at his firm. We spent Christmas together, our first truly peaceful holiday. Sarah brought her boyfriend to meet everyone, and Marcus spent the whole dinner interrogating the poor guy about his intentions toward our sister. "You're as bad as I am," I told Marcus. "I learned from the best." He shot back with a grin. We exchanged presents. I got practical things. Clothes, supplies for my dorm, a new laptop to replace my aging one. But the gift I treasured most was from the whole family. A photo album Margaret had put together. It started with pictures from our first days with the Hendersons, Marcus and me looking scared and uncertain. Then it progressed through the years. Marcus's first soccer game, my first day of high school, family dinners, holidays. The final pages were from recent months. College move-in day, Marcus's championship game, family vacation. "We wanted you to see your own story," Margaret said softly, "to see how far you've come." Looking through those photos, I could trace my own transformation. From a terrified, traumatized kid to someone with a future. From someone who survived to someone who thrived. About 6 months into our mother's sentence, we got a letter from her through our lawyer. Teresa, who'd stayed in touch over the years, called to ask if we wanted to read it. "She's not asking for anything," Teresa said. "She just wants you to know she's in treatment." Marcus and I decided to read it together, with David, Margaret, and Dr. Williams present for support. We wanted to be prepared for whatever manipulation might be inside, but the letter surprised us. It wasn't full of excuses or blame. She acknowledged what she'd done to us, admitted she'd chosen alcohol over her children repeatedly, recognized that she'd tried to manipulate Marcus and destroy my credibility to get access to money. She wrote about the AA meetings she was attending in prison, the therapy sessions where she was finally confronting her addiction and the damage it had caused. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't claim to have changed, just wanted us to know she was trying to understand why she'd made the choices she did. "What do you think?" Marcus asked me after we'd read it. "I think it doesn't matter what she's doing now. What matters is we're safe, we're loved, and we're building lives she can't touch." Dr. Williams nodded approvingly. That's a healthy perspective. Her recovery, if it's real, is about her becoming a better person for herself. Not about reconciliation with you. You don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, not even a response. We filed the letter away. Maybe someday we'd revisit it, but not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too recent. More letters came over the months. We didn't read them all, but Teresa would summarize. Our mother was apparently progressing in treatment, taking responsibility for her actions, working with a sponsor. Do you think she's really changing? Marcus asked during one of his college visits. Maybe, I said. People can change if they really want to. David and Margaret changed. We changed. Maybe she's finally decided to do the hard work. Would you ever want to see her again? I thought about it carefully. I don't know. Maybe someday when enough time has passed, I could hear her out. But I'll never trust her. I'll never let her back into our lives in any meaningful way. And I'll never, ever let her hurt you again. Marcus nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. My sophomore year of college, I declared my major, social work with a focus on child welfare. I wanted to help kids like Marcus and me, kids stuck in impossible situations with adults who should protect them but don't. The coursework was emotionally challenging. We studied abuse patterns, neglect indicators, trauma responses. Every case study felt personal. Every discussion about protecting children stirred up memories. But it also felt right, like I was finally turning all that pain into purpose. I did an internship with the local child services office, working under Teresa, who'd been promoted to supervisor. She taught me the ins and outs of the system, showed me how to advocate for kids, how to navigate the bureaucracy to get them what they needed. You have a gift for this, she told me. You understand these kids in a way someone who hasn't lived it never could. You see through the lies and defenses straight to the hurt underneath. During my junior year, David and Margaret officially adopted Sarah's suggestion to legally change our names, so all four of us shared the same last name. It was symbolic but meaningful, a public declaration that we were a family, all of us, equally. Marcus was thriving in high school, captain of the varsity soccer team, honor roll student, popular with his classmates. He'd grown into a confident, happy teenager, the kind of kid who organized fundraisers for charity and volunteered at animal shelters. Looking at him, I felt a deep sense of pride. This was the kid I'd protected all those years ago. This was the result of all the sacrifice and struggle. He'd gotten the chance to just be a kid, and look what he'd become. Senior year of college, I got matched with a practicum placement at a group home for boys ages 8-14. Boys from broken homes, abusive parents, neglectful situations. Boys who reminded me of Marcus and me. The first day, I met a kid named Jaden. 10 years old, all sharp edges and defensive posturing. He'd been removed from his mother's care after neighbors reported she'd left him alone for 3 days while she went on a bender. I don't need some college kid trying to fix me, he said, arms crossed, glaring at me. I'm not here to fix you, I said. I'm here to listen if you want to talk. And if you don't want to talk, that's okay too. What do you know about anything? He challenged. I sat down across from him. I know what it's like to raise your younger sibling because your parent couldn't. I know what it's like to go to school hungry because there's no food at home. I know what it's like to protect someone you love from the truth because they're too young to handle it. His defensive posture softened slightly. You're making that up. I'm not. I was 10 years old the first time I had to carry my mother home because she was passed out drunk. I was 12 when she kicked me out for buying myself a new shirt. I was 14 when I finally got help for me and my brother. Jaden stared at me with new eyes. What happened to you after? I got lucky. We got placed with a foster family who eventually adopted us. It wasn't perfect at first, but it got better. And now I'm here, hoping maybe I can help kids like you the way people helped me. Over the following months, I worked with Jaden and the other boys, teaching them it was okay to ask for help, that needing support didn't make them weak, that they deserved safety and stability and adults who showed up for them. It was hard work, emotionally draining, but also incredibly rewarding. Marcus came to visit during finals week, bringing care packages and moral support. He'd been accepted to several colleges on soccer scholarships and was trying to decide where to go. What do you think? He asked, showing me his acceptance letters. I think you should choose the school with the best program for what you want to study, not just the best soccer team. What if I want both? Then you're probably looking at... I scanned his letters. This one. Great business program, competitive soccer, and it's only an hour from David and Margaret. He grinned. That's the one I was leaning toward. Just wanted to make sure my brilliant older brother agreed. Your brilliant older brother thinks you're going to do amazing things wherever you go. We ordered pizza and stayed up late talking like we used to. He told me about his girlfriend, his plans for the future, his dreams of maybe coaching soccer someday while running his own business. I want to help kids like us, he said. Kids who need someone to believe in them. Maybe start a nonprofit that provides sports programs for foster kids. That's a great idea. I learned from watching you, he said. You turned everything that happened to us into something positive. You're helping other kids who've been through what we went through. I want to do the same thing, just in my own way. Pride swelled in my chest. This kid, this incredible, compassionate, determined kid who'd been through hell and come out wanting to help others. That's who Marcus had become. Graduation day was surreal. Walking across that stage to receive my diploma in social work, knowing I'd earned it despite everything, felt like vindication. Like proof that where you start doesn't determine where you end up. My whole family was there. David and Margaret beaming from the audience. Sarah cheering loud enough to embarrass me. Marcus holding up a sign that said, "That's my brother," in huge letters. After the ceremony, we took photos together. The whole family, arms around each other, smiling genuinely. Someone looking at that photo would never guess the complicated journey that had brought us there. We're so proud of you, Margaret said, hugging me tight. You've overcome so much, and you're going to help so many kids because of it. David shook my hand, then pulled me into a hug. You're an exceptional young man. We're lucky to have you as our son. Sarah punched my arm affectionately. Don't let it go to your head, but you're pretty awesome. Marcus just hugged me, not needing words. We understood each other in a way that didn't require explanation. I'd accepted a job at a children's advocacy center, working with kids who'd been through abuse and neglect. The pay wasn't great, but the work was exactly what I wanted to do. What I needed to do. My first day, my supervisor introduced me to my caseload. 15 kids, ages 6-16, all with stories that broke my heart because they were so familiar. One girl, Sophia, reminded me of how Marcus might have turned out if he'd been a girl and I hadn't protected him. She was 8, quiet, always watching for danger, parentified in the way I recognized immediately. I can see you're used to taking care of people, I said during our first meeting. That's a hard job for someone your age. She shrugged, defensive. Somebody has to. You're right, but it should be an adult, not you. What if we worked on finding adults you can trust to handle the adult stuff while you just get to be 8? She looked skeptical, but I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. That's all I needed. A flicker. 5 years later, I'm sitting in my office at the advocacy center reviewing case files when my phone rings. It's Marcus. Guess what? He says, his voice full of excitement. You got the grant for your nonprofit? We got the grant. The youth sports program is officially launching in 3 months. I feel that familiar pride. Marcus had graduated college, worked in business for a couple years to save money, and then pursued his dream of starting a nonprofit providing sports programs and mentorship for foster kids. That's incredible, Marcus. I'm so proud of you. None of this would exist without you, he says seriously. You know that, right? You gave me the stability to dream big. You showed me what it means to help others. This is as much your accomplishment as mine. Later that week, David and Margaret visit my apartment for dinner. They're both in their 60s now, talking about retirement plans, about traveling, about spending more time with their kids and eventual grandchildren. Speaking of which, Margaret says with a mischievous smile, when are you going to give us some grandchildren? I'm 26 and single, Mom. Give me a few years. Mom. The word comes naturally now. Took years to get there, but it fits. Sarah FaceTimes during dessert, video calling from her home across the country where she's a successful attorney. Her 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, wave at the camera and call me uncle, shrieking with delight. That night, after everyone's gone, I sit on my balcony with a cup of coffee and think about the 10-year-old boy who carried his mother home. The 12-year-old who got kicked out for buying a t-shirt. The 14-year-old who asked for help in a playground at midnight. I wish I could tell him that everything would work out, that the sacrifice would be worth it, that one day he'd have a family who loved him, a career that mattered, a brother who thrived. But I think somehow he already knew. That's why he kept going. Why he kept protecting Marcus. Why he never gave up. The last letter from our mother came 2 years ago. She'd completed her sentence, stayed sober, was working as a peer counselor at a rehab facility helping other addicts. She wasn't asking for anything, just wanted us to know she was still trying. Marcus asked if I wanted to respond. I thought about it for a long time before deciding not to. Maybe someday. Maybe when enough years had passed and enough healing had happened. But for now, I was content with the family I'd built. The one that chose me. The one that stuck around even when it was hard. The one that proved love isn't about biology or obligation. It's about showing up. Day after day, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. I think about Jaden, my first client from the group home. He'd been adopted by a single dad who coached his little league team. Last I heard, he was doing well in middle school, playing baseball, making friends. I think about Sophia, who'd learned to let adults carry the adult burdens and was thriving with her foster family who was in the process of adopting her. I think about the dozens of other kids I've worked with over the years. The ones who were saved and the ones I couldn't save. The successes and the failures. The heartbreak and the hope. This work isn't easy. Some days I come home emotionally exhausted, carrying the weight of trauma that isn't even mine. But then I remember why I do it. Because somewhere out there is a 10-year-old boy carrying responsibilities no child should carry. A 12-year-old girl going to bed hungry because her parent chose drugs over food. A 14-year-old trying to protect a younger sibling from a truth too heavy to bear. And maybe, just maybe, I can help them. The way Janet helped me. The way Teresa helped me. The way David and Margaret eventually helped me. It's not about saving everyone. It's about showing up for the ones I can reach and giving them a fighting chance. That night, I get a text from Marcus. Movie night this weekend? My place? Sarah's flying in. I smile and type back. Wouldn't miss it, because that's what family does. They show up. They stay. They choose each other again and again, and I'm finally truly home.